Creepy roguelites are a weird phenomenon. Usually, you don't get a masterpiece by aimlessly throwing monsters and sounds at the player. When we add a little spooky spice to our randomly generated flavor, we get a taste ranging from FNAF 50/20 mode to Minecraft cave surprises. Steam has hundreds of horror roguelites, and I was curious how many of them can hold their ground. Howdy, my name is Domivid, and let's find out what Steam suggests. Disclaimer: if you are looking for actually scary games, skip to the third entry. Game number 1, The Unliving. His name is the Necromancer, a warlord, a magician, endlessly improving his craft to conquer mortality itself, and he is a bloody disappointment. I had the highest hopes for this game from all the entries on today's list. I checked the reviews before I bought it and they hovered around 55% positive, which is very low for a game this good looking. It made me a little skeptical, but I still gave it a try. And oh boy, only after a couple of hours I understood what was missing. The Unliving is a top-down action RPG. The main gameplay loop is much simpler than the in-game tutorial is trying to teach you. You kill units to revive them on your side, you possess a ranged and melee attack with the option to kick a friendly minion into the enemies, a dash, 3 spells from different magic schools, blood, body and spirit, and the last, a sacrifice mechanic where you unalive a friendly unit to activate his ability. The sacrifice, for whatever bullshit balance reason, consumes mana. Defeat your enemies to get bodies to defeat your enemies. That's the entire premise. On paper it sounds exciting. For once, you play as the bad guy, command the army of undead and conquer the kingdom. But there are a few hiccups. First, the controls are straight up horrible. All the dashes feel bad, with way less sensitivity than you'd expect from them. Your basic attack is so insignificant that you might as well unpin this button and use it only at the start of the level to get your initial army. The army itself is massive, up to 80 units, and most of the time they get stuck in a narrow path, with no options to rearrange them. I understand that this is an RPG, not a strategy game, but when you fully rely on your units, you do need more agency over them. And don't get me started on permanent upgrades and replayability. When you clear a location for the first time, it's fun because you experience new stuff, new units, bosses, spells and so on. But after you finish a run and die, you have no option but to speed up your walkthrough. The only difference between you and the next run is the security that you will finish the same segment. Because you are bound to your slow army to progress, you might spend 30 to 60 minutes in a single location, doing the same repetitive action. And most unlockables don't even give you immediate power. Mostly just future variations that you will ignore anyway in favor of existing strong spells and buffs. Also, you know that something is sketchy when a shrine at the hub location is giving you buffs like plus 50% more damage or health to your units per level. The game feels like a mobile repo with obsolete level up mechanics. The story itself is fine, it keeps you engaged for a few hours, but it's quite predictable. I know this will be a spoiler and maybe even an intended choice from the developer, but I find it very amusing that they're trying to hide the personality of a boss right before giving you a flashback with a character in exactly the same stance. If I have to choose a few things that I've enjoyed, then those must be the first boss and the third location. Apotheosis, it's a nice spectacle and surprised me the first time. The third location is a much more difficult area than the cemetery or the swamp, which requires you to juggle fewer units, around 20, and be more strategic with them. I understand that this was supposed to be a power fantasy, but it doesn't seem to work on the scale they tried. The endgame content must be plenty, as the hub location contains hundreds of unlockable upgrades. Also, to finish the main quest, you have to fully clear the game at least 3 times, which is a much harder task than you would expect. Art is fantastic, dialogues are meh, music is completely forgettable. The game has accessibility options to tinker with difficulty. The community so far seems quite dead and disappointed. For the same reasons I get upset, with no realistic way to fix it. The game is dead. with the last update being a year ago. As a fun fact, while I was researching, I find that they tried to optimize the search engine to make the game pop up when you Google the best necromancy games, but they end up creating a bunch of lists with games better than theirs. Sadly, it needed at least one more year of polish to balance stuff out, but most likely they ran out of money or the publisher got impatient. Deserved D tier. I would recommend it only at a discount and only if you're hungry for good pixel art or necromancy power fantasy. Game number 2. Eyes in the Dark. Victoria Bloom is a child looking to rescue her grandpa from an eldritch horror. She has a magic watch that returns her back in time every instant she succumbs to darkness. Her only way out? To kill the final boss 10 times or so and complete her grandpa quest. The plot here falls behind art direction and music, only contested by gameplay after 2 or 3 hours. The game is a twin-stick shooter. You use one stick to move and another to shoot with a weapon that reminds you more of a flamethrower rather than a flashlight. You move through a randomly generated mansion and clear floors until you get to the final 10th boss, which is accessible only from your 3rd playthrough. For upgrades you have shoes, bulbs and ammo that all changes the way you deal with the enemies, like transforming your straight light attack into sparks or actual flamethrower, and small stuff like batteries to boost your raw stats. Sadly, none of this matters since your attacks fly roughly within the same radius and barely change the effective range. The game is fun for the first 2 hours, time you spend exploring the mechanics and possibilities. Later in my playthrough, I realized one thing that changed the game for me forever. When you take a closer look at the mansion layout, you start to see the pattern. The randomly generated structure doesn't work because there are only 4 types of rooms in total. 4! Basic rooms, shops, boss rooms and challenge rooms. I swear, if I gave you random footage from all 9 locations for a minute straight, you would recognize only the shop, next to the giant socially awkward raven and maybe a few boss rooms if you consider small details. Also, the game has another overarching problem that usually plagues open world games. After the first floor, you are free to play the zones in almost any order you want, which means that instead of scaling up the difficulty with tougher enemies, it is mostly done through scaling numbers. Our favorite savior, auto-leveling. This felt incredibly frustrating when I was fighting the pre-final boss of the loop, only to be swarmed by minions with too much health. When you slay this boss in the usual order, closer to 2nd or 3rd, it's mere cakewalk, and no, he doesn't get any new attacks, only higher numbers. By the end of every run, I had the urge to fly past the enemies and fight the boss to finish the cycle, which is only a reflection of the main problem of the game. Fighting is not that fun nor challenging on its own, and the reward is only the local currency used for upgrades that transform the game into a grind fest. On the bright side, the game has a low entry point and could become your casual entry if you want to present indie games to a more chill public. Also, after you beat the final boss, you open the challenge tab that tries to modify the game and give it more diversity. If this is enough variation for you, be my guest. Art is memorable and clean, dialogues are barely necessary to the game and rather annoyed me. Music is completely fine, especially the main theme that remind me a lot of Lena Raine, the composer for Celeste. There are a few accessibility options to make the game easier, and I am glad that I've used a few of them on the last run. The game feels complete, but can't say that the community is very active. Certain C tier. If you really want more twin-stick shooters in your life, or if you're a die-hard black and white enthusiast, give it a chance. Game number 3. Monstrum. Amnesia. Roguelite Amnesia. Before they created the bunker. Roguelite Amnesia that got me scared for good. The game was released in 2015 and still holds up. The main problem with the horror genre in general is the fact that you know it's a game. It runs on code, monsters have predictable behavior, and sometimes their script just straight up doesn't work. However, if you boot up a scary game for the first time and go into it blind, you have a high chance of catching. Obviously, it's not a substitute for good game design, and any horror game can fall anywhere in the spectrum, from bland jump scare
めちゃくちゃ怖いですね。
to Hours of the Unknown. What do you think? Where exactly did Monstrum fall? Or amnesia for that matter? If you have any interesting take, please share it in the comments. Also, a small plug. If you're looking for more game analysis, you can check this video, where I explain why I believe Slay the Spire and Hades are by a mile ahead of many games from the same era. Click on the card and let's go back. I find it funny that during my first run I actually had to make the game quieter, because it gave me too much anxiety. When I encountered the first monster, the fact that I didn't know how it worked was 100 times scarier than the fact that it caught me. Here I got a stark reminder of my fight or flight response, and it's freeze. When I see them, I would rather stay and play dead than run. The comparison with Amnesia is also not an empty catch. For me personally, The Dark Descent was my first mainstream horror experience, outside niche stuff like the old Nosferatu game or Cliff Barker's Undying. But the main loop is actually very similar. Collect items to solve the puzzle for one of 3 escape paths, find the information in which monsters follows you, distract the monster, keep a light source for navigation, run, die, repeat, until completed or complain already that the game is too unfair. The problem with the Unliving and Ice in the Dark is that I feel too sluggish on top of an overcomplicated loop and grindy endgame. This is a good example where rogue elements, aka having the whole game generated and open from the get-go, makes you feel weirdly freed. I will leave all the monsters' tricks and behaviors up to you to discover. If you want a time machine for the old horror times, don't spoil your own adventure with too many tips. Not at least until you get competitive about it. The art is quite outdated by today's standards and looks half decent in the pitch dark. The game has no conversations or memorable music, but the sound design does a good job of giving you information and chills. Yes, Steam Wind. Fishy. In terms of accessibility, I found nothing. The game is finished and even has a sequel on which fans have quite a strong negative opinion. The original Monstrum is kinda alive only thanks to mods and some loyal members posting memes while helping each other in the community sap. Final remark, I don't like this game, and even had the most trouble recording it, but I understand what's the target audience, and judging from the Steam activity, people still return to it. The only critique left from me is the escape objectives. I know that holding hands with the players is not the best practice in the industry, but knowing what to do in order to escape can be quite confusing for a newbie. In rest, balanced B tier, or A tier if you're really into horror roguelites. If you're into Outlast, Amnesia, Penumbra, Slender and so on, give it a chance. Honestly, it's a pity that all the games from today showed promise, yet only one managed to fully capitalize on it. But hey, that's the gamble you take when you follow a wild recommendation. With that said, I trust you now feel more enlightened and I keep to draw your own conclusion, and perhaps give a chance to any of them. If you breed spooky games as if your life depended on it, check this video where I dive into the oldest horror roguelite on Steam, or this one where I discuss why I consider World of Horror the peak of visual novel design. If you are watching this video on release day, this might still be in the making, so expect them a little bit later. For those contemplating backing this channel, leave some feedback in the comments. My serotonin circuit will be very pleased with your input. Also, if you like to create games and don't know how to draw or just want some experimental fun, check out my itch.io page. I have quite a large variety of games and assets that are waiting just for the perfect neko. If you try them out and have an interesting idea on how to improve, please share it as well. Thanks again for being here, have a nice day, and don't forget to stay positive. See ya!